of the matter. Start recording again. So today we are talking about back to basics. I'm continuing the discussion that we had 2 weeks ago in our previous trader chat, in which we spoke about sort of getting started with Centene Trader, particularly answering several questions from many new users, particularly new users to the Analyst Edition, in terms of how to get started with Centene Trader, how to get data into Centene Trader, and things like that. Today I'm going to continue that discussion, and I'm going to speak about how do you know whether your analysis is any good. One of the really common questions that we get from new users and current users and even experienced users is, how do I know whether my analysis is any good? So let's take a look at Centene Trader, and there we go. Here is Centene Trader, and let me turn some of these things off, and let's speak through what we have going here. This is the S&P 500. If you have any questions at any time, please ask them. And I'll do my best to answer them. But where our discussion left off after the previous trader chat, we had managed to load a chart into Centene Trader. We got to the point where I clicked that big green button. I defined an analysis period. In other words, I told Centene Trader what region was loaded in the chart it should analyze. And it's worth me just do some of that again. As you can see in this particular chart, the left-hand third of the data is grayed out. Okay, it's gray in color, and the reason for that is because Centene Trader is not including it in the analysis. So all of this data over here at the far left-hand side is not included in the analysis, whereas all of this data from here forwards is being analyzed. Now, that's because we have defined an analysis period. In other words, we've told Centene Trader what part of the data should be analyzed. That is the one thing that, as a Centene Trader user, you must do in order to ensure that Centene Trader is giving you a good analysis. Okay, well, it's the first thing that you should do. We're going to be speaking about a few other things today, but it's the first and very important thing that you must do. Why is it so important? It's very important because Centene Trader uses a pattern recognition sort of analysis. Centene Trader is very unusual in terms of technical analysis software packages. It does not perform what I describe as a purely mathematical analysis. In other words, it doesn't simply calculate a moving average, for instance, which is a purely mathematical device. What Centene Trader does is it performs a pattern recognition style of analysis. And because it is based on the amazing analysis processes taught by Hurst, or published by Hurst in his cycles course, which he published in the early 1970s, pretty much exactly 40 years ago. In fact, we should probably have a big celebration of the 40-year publication date. So I think it was 1972 he published the cycles course for the first time. So the pattern recognition approach means that the software or you as an analyst need to look at the data, and you need to see what patterns you can see in terms of what cycles are evident, where the troughs are prominent, and all that kind of thing. Okay. One of the really big issues, though, with pattern recognition is that you need to be careful that that patterns that aren't really there appear to be there. And one of the most dangerous places that can happen is the far left-hand edge of your chart. And as I demonstrated last week, at the far left-hand edge of this chart in what's that, October 1998, you can see there's a really prominent trough over there. Okay, I'm drawing arrows pointing towards it. There's a really prominent trough in price. And if you had Centene Trader analyze the full data series, then Centene Trader would say that looks like a really big important trough. Okay, and it might say that must be the trough of a 4.5 year cycle, or some really big long cycle. And the danger with that is that, of course, Centene Trader doesn't know what happened just before that time, and price might have risen exponentially just before that, meaning that, in fact, the trough should have been placed just a few months earlier. Centene Trader has various safeguards in place in the coding to prevent it from doing something, obviously stupid like that. But the basic principle applies that you need to help Centene Trader to produce a good analysis by choosing a suitable analysis period. And the process is really very simple. What you need to do is you need to use your knowledge of the markets, or simply use your own pattern recognition skills and identify a trough that looks like it must be the trough of a fairly prominent cycle. Here, as you can see, there are two really obvious, let me just clear this whiteboard here. There are really obvious troughs. There's one there, and there's one over here. Let me just do that again. There we go. That trough is really prominent, and that trough is really prominent in the price movement. Okay, so then, having identified a really prominent trough, you need to go back to the previous peak, which for this trough would be over here, and for this trough would be over here. And then you need to choose a point somewhere. I generally say, as a rule of thumb, about 2/3 of the distance from the peak to the trough, and you define an analysis start period somewhere over here. Now, I haven't chosen this one, obviously, because then Centene Trader would only be analyzing this much data, which is about 4 years worth of data. That's not really enough data. How much data should you be analyzing to get a good analysis? Well, I recommend pretty much sort of between 5 and 10 years. 7 or 8 years worth of data is more than adequate to get a good analysis. And as you can see, this particular analysis period that we've defined here is giving us an analysis going back to 2002. So it's giving us an analysis over 10 years worth of data. So that's bound to be a really good analysis. Okay. So having defined your analysis period, which we did, Centene Trader would then perform the analysis, and it would then pop up the results. One of the really common questions that we get is how do I know that that is a good analysis? Okay, Centene Trader's done the analysis. How do I know it's any good? We are really proud of the analysis that Centene Trader performs, and more and more we rely completely on the analysis that Centene Trader performs, because its analysis actually is getting better and better as time passes, and more people are using it because of issues like the commonality database and things like that. But so generally, the analysis that Centene Trader performs is generally really good. Okay, so it's very unusual that Centene Trader will produce a really poor analysis, but there are a few rules of thumb which I'm going to provide you with for you to know whether your analysis is any good or not. One of the most interesting ways that you can do it is you can go to Tools, Show Phasing Information. Now, this little box pops up. I don't know whether you can see that box properly, but that box provides you with an analysis rating. Okay, Centene Trader uses the analysis rating to compare the many different analyses that it performs behind the scenes. But an understanding of the analysis rating will help you to have more confidence in the analysis. Now, I know many people like to have absolutely cut and dried levels for what is a good analysis rating. If it's above 500, that means it's good. If it's below 500, that means it's bad. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as an analysis performed using Hurst cyclic principles is as much an art or a skill as it is a purely scientific process. So it's a bit like saying to an artist, is that a good painting? Most artists will say, it's subjective, and you can't say it is absolutely a good painting or it is not a good painting. And to some extent, although it doesn't go all the way, but to some extent, you will find that I see a question. Let me get that a moment. To some extent, the understanding of an analysis is a slightly flexible thing. In other words, you can't be absolutely cut and dried about it. You can't be absolutely black and white about that's a good analysis or that's not a good analysis. I see a question from Stephen. How do I get audio today? Perhaps that means, can you just suggest you log out in there? Paul's with me in the office today. So there. Okay, so let's take a look at the information that Centene Trader provides in this analysis rating and discuss all of these things. Okay, the first thing that Centene Trader provides us with is the trough isolation average. That's a number. As you can see here, it's 675. Now, what does that number mean? Is it a percentage? No, obviously it's not a percentage. What's the maximum? Well, there isn't a maximum. What's the minimum? Again, there isn't a minimum. Okay, so it's a completely not arbitrary. It's a number that can vary greatly. If you want to confirm two different analyses on the same data series, then you can compare your trough isolation averages. The higher the trough isolation average, generally speaking, the better the analysis is. What is a trough isolation average? Well, it is a way of measuring the isolation of the troughs of each and every single cycle that has been found in the current analysis. So this analysis is going all the way from 54 months all the way down to 5 days, and it looks at the isolation of each one of those troughs, and it, as a result, calculates how clear those troughs are. In other words, how clearly visible. Your trough isolation average is a measure, if you like, of how clear the cycles are in the market. Okay, so the higher the trough isolation average is, the clearer the cycles are in the market according to the current analysis. Okay, so that's the first thing that is measured. The next thing that is measured is what's called VTL confirmation percentage. Now, what Centene Trader does is it goes back and it draws every single VTL for every single cycle that it possibly finds throughout this entire analysis. A VTL is, of course, a valid trend